The night the flood came, the sky looked like a living thing tearing itself apart. Lightning split the heavens in white veins, thunder rolled across the desert like cannon fire, and the dry Fork River, usually nothing more than a shallow stream crawling between cracked stones, had risen into a wild brown serpent. Inside a sagging ranch house on the edge of that river, a man named Eli Carter sat by a dying fire, chewing the last corner of cornbread he owned. He was a poor man, too poor for dreams, too proud to beg. His hands were scarred from fence wire, his boots cracked from years of dust, and his eyes carried the quiet weight of someone who had seen too much loss to complain about it anymore. He leaned back in his creaking chair and listened to the storm hammer his roof. Every gust of wind felt like a reminder of how fragile everything he owned was, how one bad night could take it all. But when you've lost a wife and land before, a man learns that fear can only hurt you so much. He closed his eyes, trying to ignore the ache in his stomach and the cold creeping through the cracks in the door. That was when he heard it, faint, distant, but sharp enough to slice through the roar of the rain. A scream. Eli sat up, heart thudding. It came again, longer this time, carried on the wind. Someone was out there. He snatched his lantern, threw on his oilskin coat, and stepped into the storm. The rain came down in sheets so thick he could barely see. The ground was a river of mud. Each step sank deep, sucking at his boots. But the sound came again, two voices, desperate and terrified. He followed it toward the river, the lantern flame shaking wildly in his hand. When he reached the bank, his stomach turned cold. The river had swollen wider than he'd ever seen it, a raging torrent of mud and branches and debris. In the center of it, barely visible, was a wagon half tilted in the current. Two figures clung to the wreck, their arms slipping, their faces flashing pale in the lightning. "Hold on," Eli shouted, his voice nearly lost in the storm. "Hold on, I'm comin'." He tied the end of his rope around a fence post, looped it around his chest, and stepped into the current. The water slammed into him with the force of a charging bull. His boots slipped, the mud sucked at his legs, but he kept pushing. His lungs burned, his body shook, but the sight of those two figures fighting to stay alive kept him moving. The wagon groaned and shifted as he reached it. One of the women shouted something in a language he couldn't understand, Apache, maybe, but her tone needed no translation. She was begging him to save her sister first. He reached for the nearest one, gripping her wrist. Her skin was slick and strong, her arm thick with muscle, and when she clutched his forearm, he felt his bones strain under her strength. He pulled with everything he had. The current fought back, trying to tear them apart, but somehow, through sheer stubbornness and blind faith, he dragged her toward the bank. When they finally collapsed on the muddy shore, he coughed up half the river and turned back for the other. The second woman was already fighting to free herself from the wagon. Without thinking, he plunged in again, reached her, and half carried, half dragged her through the current until all three lay gasping in the mud. For a moment, there was nothing but the sound of rain and the ragged breathing of three people who had nearly died together. The first woman sat up, her hair plastered to her face, her eyes blazing dark and fierce. Even through the rain, Eli could see how tall she was, easily a head taller than him, her frame broad, her shoulders like a warrior's. Her sister beside her was no smaller, though her eyes were softer, her mouth trembling with exhaustion. "Why you help?" the first one demanded, her accent heavy but her words clear. "Why you save Apache?" Eli wiped rain from his face, his chest heaving. "Because you were dyin'. Don't need another reason than that." She stared at him, searching his face like she didn't believe men like him existed. Then she nodded slowly. "I am Neola," she said finally. "My sister, Taya." "Eli," he replied. "Eli Carter." The rain had eased to a drizzle by the time he helped them to his cabin. Inside, he got a fire going, stripped off his soaked coat, and threw a blanket over their shivering shoulders. His bed was too small for women their size, but they sat near it anyway, their presence filling the room. He handed them cups of weak coffee and a few pieces of hard bread. They ate silently, glancing at him with a mixture of caution and gratitude. When he finally sat down, Eli noticed the bruises on their arms, deep purple marks that weren't from the river. "You heard before the flood?" he asked quietly. Neola hesitated, then said, "Men in town. They laugh, call us monsters, try touch us, we fight, run, then water come." Eli clenched his jaw. He'd seen men in that town, drunk cowhands who thought they owned the world. He wasn't surprised. "You did right to run," he said. "Ain't no shame in that." Taya's eyes softened. "You good man," Eli Carter. Not many like you. He gave a rough laugh. Good, I'm just poor. Poor folks don't have the time to hate anyone. For a moment, the three of them simply listened to the fire crackle. The cabin smelled of wet wood and smoke, but the warmth slowly returned to their bones. Outside, the storm rumbled its last warning, retreating across the hills. The next morning, Eli woke to the sound of movement outside. When he stepped out, he saw the twins already working. They were clearing branches, stacking wood, dragging pieces of the broken fence back into place. Their strength was unbelievable. Where he needed a lever or a horse, they used their bare hands. Yet there was grace in their movements, a quiet rhythm that matched the desert wind. He tried to help, but Naola waved him off gently. You rest. You save us. We work. He couldn't argue. Watching them move through the morning light, their long braids glistening, their faces calm and steady, he felt something stir in his chest he hadn't felt in years, a strange, peaceful awe. When they smiled at him, it was small and fleeting, but it made the loneliness inside him ache. By noon, they sat together again, eating boiled beans and dry bread. The twins asked about his land, his cattle, his life. He told them the truth, how drought had ruined his ranch, how fever had taken his wife 3 winters ago, how he'd stayed because there was nowhere else to go. He expected pity, but Naola only said, you strong. Stronger than many who think they are rich. He shook his head. Don't feel that way most days. Taya smiled softly. But we see it. You alone, yet heart not empty. That is strength. He didn't know how to answer. The silence that followed wasn't heavy, it was gentle, like the hush of the desert after rain. The wind whispered through the broken boards, the fire popped, and for the first time in a long time, Eli Carter didn't feel quite so poor. He didn't know yet what it meant, that he'd tied his fate to 2 women who carried their own storms inside them. He only knew that the river had taken everything before, but last night, for once, it had given something back. The storm had passed, but its echo still lingered in the quiet. The desert after rain always smelled like forgiveness, wet sage, fresh dust, and a faint sweetness that clung to the air. The stars had come out sharp and silver, stretching endless over the black hills. Inside Eli Carter's cabin, the fire crackled low, casting amber light across the wooden walls and the faces of the 2 women who now sat near it, faces both foreign and familiar, strong yet touched with something soft that made Eli's chest tighten whenever he looked their way. He was sitting in his chair, half dozing after a day of rebuilding fences and hauling driftwood from the river. The twins had worked beside him all day, tireless as the sun, lifting logs and repairing the barn with a quiet understanding that needed no words. Their size and strength had drawn stares in town before, they'd told him, but here on the ranch, under a poor man's roof, it was something almost holy. Useful, honest, he'd never met anyone like them. The crackle of the fire and the soft sound of the desert outside lulled him toward sleep. His hat had tilted over his eyes when he felt it, a touch, gentle but deliberate, on his arm. His eyes opened slowly. Both women were kneeling before him, their shadows long across the floorboards. We need to speak, Naola said. Her voice was quiet, low as the rumble of distant thunder. Eli sat up straighter, rubbing the sleep from his eyes. Sure, he said cautiously. What's on your mind? Taya's hands were folded in her lap, her dark eyes glimmering in the firelight. We tell you truth, she began, her tone uncertain but firming with each word. River not only danger we ran from. Eli frowned. You mean the storm? Naola shook her head. No, soldiers. That word landed like a stone. He set his cup down slowly. Soldiers from Fort Sibley. Yes, Naola said, her jaw tightening. They come to trade lands. But not to trade, to hunt. They say we too big, too strong. Say we are cursed women. One night, they took our mother. Said they will take us too. We run. Eli felt a cold knot twist in his chest. He had seen the cruelty of patrols before, men who treated Apache life as less than dust. But the image of these 2 women, powerful as they were, running through the dark while soldiers hunted them, made his stomach burn. They killed your mother? He asked quietly. Taya's lips trembled, but she nodded. She was medicine woman, kind. She healed white men's children once. Still they shot her, said she was too tall to be woman of earth. The fire popped, and for a moment, none of them spoke. The sound of the desert wind drifted in through the cracks, a soft mournful hum. Eli stared into the flames, jaw set tight. I'm sorry, he said finally, his voice rough. World's got too many fools with power and too few with hearts. Naola looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. You understand more than most. I don't know about that, he said. I just know pain's the same color no matter who bleeds. For the first time, Naola smiled, a small, sad curve of her lips that changed her face completely. You talk like elder, but your eyes still young. Eli almost smiled back. You don't know half of what these eyes have seen. For a while, there was peace. The fire burned lower, flickering gold across the room. Outside, a coyote howled somewhere in the distance, lonely and long. The sisters sat close to him, and though they were silent, their presence felt like an invisible circle around him, one he didn't know he needed until now. Then Taya broke the silence. You have no wife. The question caught him off guard. He hesitated before answering. Not anymore. Dead, Naola asked softly. He nodded. Fever. 3 winters ago. Took her fast. They didn't speak right away. Then Taya reached out, placing her hand lightly on his knee. Her touch was warm, heavy, grounding. We sorry, she said. Loneliness is worst wound. He swallowed hard. Ain't something that heals easy. Both women exchanged a look, not of pity, but of recognition. They understood loss too deeply. Naola's gaze softened, her voice barely above a whisper. You give us life. You share home, food, fire. We feel it. Eli looked up, unsure what she meant. Feel what? She leaned forward slightly, her dark eyes locked on his. The way your heart moves when you look at us. You think you hide it. But we see. His throat went dry. I didn't mean. Taya interrupted softly. We not angry. We same. He froze. What do you mean? The fire crackled, the silence between them thick enough to touch. Taya's eyes flickered toward her sister before she spoke again. We feel same thing. For you. Eli blinked, stunned. For me. Naola nodded, her expression unreadable. You are man who did not look at us with fear. Or disgust. You saw people, not monsters. I just did what any man should, he said quietly. No. Naola whispered. Not any man. Only you. Her words sank into him like warm rain on dry soil. He wanted to speak, to say something to break the weight of what hung between them, but he couldn't find breath. Then Taya said something that made the world tilt. We want you, Eli Carter. Together. The words weren't a joke. There was no laughter, no hesitation. Only truth. The kind that stripped a man bare. He stared at them both, the firelight dancing in their eyes, the scent of rain still clinging to their hair. You, both, he whispered. Yes, Naola said. We share life. Always together. If heart chooses, it chooses as one. Eli's hands trembled slightly as he ran them through his hair. You don't know what you're saying. I'm a poor rancher, got nothing but broken land and worn-out boots. You deserve more. Taya smiled faintly. More. We had riches once. Land, horses, family. All gone. Richness not in what you own, Eli Carter. It's in what you give. He looked at her, then at Naola, and saw no deceit, no pity, just warmth, sincerity, and strength. The firelight painted their faces in gold, and for the first time in years, he didn't feel the sharp edge of loneliness digging into his chest. He felt seen. The wind outside had died. The night was perfectly still. The cabin seemed to breathe with them, slow and soft. The twins leaned closer, their shadows merging on the wall. Naola reached out, her hand finding his. Her grip was strong but tender, as if she were holding something fragile she didn't want to break. You gave us back life, she said quietly. Now we give you back heart. Eli closed his eyes for a long moment, his breath uneven. He'd spent years surviving, not living. The world had taken everything from him. Maybe this was its strange way of giving something back. When he opened his eyes, the two women were watching him with a kind of silent patience that burned through him. I don't know if I deserve that, he said at last. Naola shook her head. Deserve is word of men who count coins. We speak of spirit. You have one that heals. He didn't answer. He couldn't. The fire popped again, and a soft gust slipped through the open window, carrying the smell of wet earth. That night, they stayed together by the fire, not as strangers, not as savior and saved, but as 3 lost souls who had somehow found their way to the same small piece of earth. There was no need for promises, no talk of tomorrow. Just warmth, quiet breathing, and the slow, steady rhythm of hearts that had finally found a place to rest. When dawn came, the first light crept through the window and found them still sitting close, wrapped in the same blanket of silence. The desert beyond glowed gold and endless. Eli Carter stepped outside and looked north, toward the distant hills where the Apache lands began. The sisters joined him, one on each side. And though no words were spoken, something bound them then, something stronger than the river that had tried to take them and more sacred than the loneliness that had once defined them all. They would walk into that horizon together, toward danger, toward uncertainty, but also toward something rare, the kind of belonging no riches could buy.